test this feature, please?
Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning, good evening, depending on where you are joining us from. We welcome you to the list. And today, we continue on the series of the webinars that we've been having. So just a brief background to the project, the ADI. So the ADI is the Accelerated Innovation Delivery Initiative, which is part of the US government's Global Hunger and Poverty initiative, the Feed the Future. So this is a joint, venture between the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, and Department of State, which is the Diplomacy Development Response. So the goal of the ADI activity is really to just provide critical support and to ensure that the millions of smallholder farmers in Zambia, Malawi, Tanzania have at their fingertips information and innovations needed using demand-led and market-based approaches to maintain or increase food production under climate change and to mitigate the impact of the global food, fuel, and the prices that have gone high. So ADI is being implemented by a consortium of partners. So the ones that are implementing it is CIMMYT and IFDC, the International Fertilizer Development Center. And the activities are targeted at strengthening the local seed systems, to enable farmers have access to improved and multi-stress tolerant crop varieties. So this also to just see to it that there's improvement in soil health and fertilizer use efficiency, and to deliver critical agricultural services deep into the rural communities. So ideally, the objective of this series is to feature ADI partners, to present their activities and emerging lessons in the life of the project. So today, we are privileged to look at the gender, social inclusion, and BACKFEED strategies in ADI, delivering the difference, just updates from the field. So we are privileged in that sense that we have Dr. Monica Fisher, who is an agricultural economist, who works on gender equity and social inclusion at CIMMYT, specifically on inclusive agricultural development and digital inclusion. So just a brief introduction to Monica. So Dr. Monica holds a PhD in agricultural economics from Purdue University. And Monica has over 20 years experience in agricultural research for development in Kenya, Malawi, Senegal, Ethiopia, Malawi, and Zambia. So previously, she held faculty positions at Oregon State University and as well as University of Idaho. And she holds a scientist position at the international. Currently, she's a senior scientist at CIMMYT, and she has previously held positions at International Food Policy Research, as well as the International Center for Insect Physiology and Ecology, CIPE. So Monica has published extensively in scholarly journals and written research briefs, as well as gender strategies for projects funded by World Bank, DFID, and other organizations. So she has demonstrated leadership in gender and impact assessment teams, and her most rewarding professional experiences has been the many conversations and moments that she has shared with smallholders in Africa. So without further ado, let me invite Monica presentation. We will leave a few minutes before the end for clarifying questions and also just to understand, if you would like to know anything regarding the topic at hand. Thank you very much. Monica, over to you.
Thanks so much, Brian, for the comprehensive introduction to the ADI project, as well as a nice introduction to my work. I just wanted to say it's a pleasure to be here today to talk about this project that has been very dear to many of us working at CIMMYT. So I'm presenting on behalf of an amazing team whose names are listed here, including Brian, who just introduced me. So what this study is about is we're trying to engage with the idea of moving from what is currently a digital divide to an opportunity in the digital space. And to do that, we're working with farmers in Zambia to try and transform agricultural information channels, which we know are currently not very socially inclusive. So on the left, we see an example of the digital divide in Zambia at our study site. And we can see that that some farmers don't have access. Some farmers don't have access to a phone, and others have access to smartphones, and they're educated and they're very attuned to all things digital. And so it creates this possibility that as the digital revolution unfolds in agriculture, that rather than this us seizing this as an opportunity to overcome social exclusion in agricultural information channels, that it may perpetuate the divide. Instead, we would really like to get to the situation on the right. This is what we aspire to. We aspire to a situation where a farmer, regardless of age, gender, their economic status, they have access to, interest to, and trust in a digital platform that can give them an opportunity to not only receive information, but also feed into, be part of the creation of information. And such, if we can get to that point where we have inclusion and we have trust, then a farmer such as this one will take a break from her farming activities spontaneously and call in to our platform to get agricultural information. Okay, so just a quick overview of the study. So it's an ongoing 2-year study that's part of the AIDI project. It's focused on Zambia, although we're also interested in extending the work to Malawi and Tanzania if possibilities arise. So just quickly, you know, the why, what, how, and who questions. So why are we doing this? I already talked a little bit about, you know, the digitalization in agriculture that's advancing rapidly, and that it presents both risks and opportunities, and we want to be on the side of opportunities. What do we do here is we design, implement, and evaluate what we're calling and hope to be an inclusive digital advisory platform. So it has some in-person elements and some digital elements, because our experience from talking with numerous farmers in Zambia suggests that there's a lot of trust in in-person extension. We don't want to do away with it altogether. We want to complement it through digital means, which have some advantages, of course. So the digital advisory platform that we've developed, we're calling Atubandike, which means let's chat or let's have a conversation in the Zambian language, Tonga. How do we do the work? So we've applied a reach, benefit, empower, transform framework. And then we're trying to learn about the application of that and about the, you know, how the social inclusiveness of the Atubandike platform through participatory action research and impact assessment. So we have both qualitative and quantitative components. We have both a situation where we're very engaged with farmers in participatory action for the design of the platform, but we also have points where we step back as researchers and have that distance through a randomized control trial. Finally, who are we working with? We're working with farmers in multiple roles, and I don't really like the word beneficiary. Instead, I'd say collaborators and users of our platform, or people who gain or see value in the platform. We're also working with the Zambian government, the Ministry of Agriculture, as well as some civil society organizations. Viamo is our partner It's a social enterprise that you probably have heard of in terms of their interactive voice response approach. And then we're also hoping to work closely with ADI partners now that we've got the project underway. So in the talk, I'm going to talk about each of these elements briefly, but I'm going to focus on the reach, benefit, and power transform framework, mainly because it's something I haven't talked on in previous talks. All right, so I won't say very much here because I've already covered this. So why would you do this? Because we're cautiously optimistic about inclusive digital advisory in sub-Saharan Africa. The graph on the right shows that mobile phones are increasingly owned and used by diverse farmers in Africa. This is from an agri-tech survey in 2019 and 2020. And we see that the data comes from 34 countries. The average is 84% of the adults that were interviewed owned a phone. And the high is 96%, and Angola 57 is the low. So we see digital advisory as being able to complement in-person agricultural extension services, overcoming some of the key barriers, as I mentioned. One of the things that isn't often discussed in these conversations is how digital advisory can have has some inclusive features. So for example, we see our farmer on the right. She's able to call in, assuming there's coverage in her location, she can call in to the platform and get the content when and where she needs it. We also, digital advisory can use voice-based messaging in local languages, which can speak to literacy challenges in the areas that we are working. It also has the advantage, digital platforms can give women and other folks access to wider, more diverse peer networks that go beyond just their village and just beyond their friends and family. So that's another advantage, potential advantage of digital. Now, of course, we're also cautious. We're cautious here because we don't want to, we feel that there is a risk of perpetuating existing social exclusion without care. And this comes from, a review of literature. There are a couple of studies that I mentioned here. Edgar et al. Reviewed over 140 ICT for Ag initiatives in the last couple of decades. And in a review by Dittmer et al., they looked at 61 DETs specifically for social inclusion. And a key conclusion is that few of these digital extension tools represent meaningful social inclusion. So the question comes, are we repeating, or are we going to repeat the same social exclusion mistakes of in-person agricultural extension? Where, for example, the photo on the top right, you see that we have a male advisor. So are we going to have males, mainly males, as the knowledge brokers, and target male farmers? And so that can happen if we focus, for instance, on a technology that most farmers don't have access to. So in the bottom right, this is from our survey in Zambia in the last year, we see that, yes, phone ownership is high for any phone, but these are feature phones. Smartphone ownership is very low, and particularly for women, 1%. It's actually less than 1% of women at our survey site have access to a smartphone. So if we use a smartphone technology, we will miss out. We will exclude a high percentage of farmers in our study area. So the question is, how can we do better? We can do better by taking deliberate measures to understand and address social exclusion, and then identify some lessons to support inclusive agricultural advisors. So we want to be part of the conversation. There's a lot of work going on right now to understand what is needed, what are some guidelines for inclusive agricultural advisors. All right. Okay, so just quickly, so what did we develop? We co-developed and rolled out a prototype digital Atubandike platform. So I'm just going to go to the next slide and show you what Atubandike is. So to understand Atubandike, we want to start at the farmer. The farmer is at the center of our platform. So we have a farmer who calls in to, she makes a call from her phone to a toll-free number, 667, and that gives her access to a database of IVR advisory content. So that database, which has been populated by CIMMYT, initially by CIMMYT and Viamo, allows our farmer access to pre-recorded messages. Later on, there will be talk shows and also peer farmer experiences. So there's both static content, the pre-recorded messages, as well as dynamic content, things that are going to be developed through the life of the project on a regular basis. So I wanted to, Eduardo, I wanted to just quickly, there we go. Thank you. Just wanted to let you hear.
Mutinda and I were discussing the harvest of our maize crop. Seeing that it's now harvest season, we decided to come and seek some guidance as we have noticed your harvest has been the most impressive. You don't lose much grain.
Oh, thank you. I just make sure before I harvest my grain.
Thanks so much, Eduardo. So I just wanted to give you an example of what a farmer will hear when they call into the platform. So they have access to 60 messages of this type that have been very, very carefully reviewed to ensure that they're as socially inclusive in messaging as is possible. Now, that isn't, so then now the farmer can listen, but then they can send back, they can ask questions, they can share their experiences, and that goes up to the database of IVR advisory content. Viamo then shares those questions and experiences with a content committee that meets in person. So this content committee is meeting on a regular basis. Cleo, who's on one of our leading this, our team member from CIMMYT leading this, can respond to any questions about the content committee, but I believe it's meeting every 2 weeks, and they review content, and we have a equal representation of farmers, agronomists, and government. Of course, it's gender balanced as well. They review the questions, they select experiences, and they answer the questions. And then that becomes new content that's put onto the app. So that forms a talk show that every 2 weeks we have new talk shows and new peer farmer experiences. It's actually every week we alternate between talk shows and peer farmer experiences. Now, the farmers, I think, this might sound like, okay, easy, the farmer's going to adopt, but what we've found is actually there's more to it than this. Farmers need some support in adopting and finding the value in this sort of platform. And so we've called in collaborators, digital champions and community members. So here we have an example of a digital champion. So a digital champion is somebody who's village-based, so they and often are selected by community members themselves. They receive some training from us, and then they're there to provide digital support and also some basic ag advisory. So they support the farmers in that way. And then we also are working through communities and what we're calling transformative community engagement activities. And that is there to help support access, because we know that access is not just about whether somebody can afford a phone. It's also about social norms. And so this is particularly where the community comes in. All right, sorry, it's a little slow going between. So here's some, so we just rolled out the digital part of the platform in September. And so this is some preliminary participation statistics. We've had, in the last month, we had 3,123 callers this is just from one of the main district that we're focusing on in Zambia, Southern Province. Now, the first graph is showing the frequency of listening to static content in September by gender and age. And what we see is there is some gender difference, but I mean, often it's that females were calling in more often than men. And then on the right, we have the proportion that recorded a question. We had a lot of questions come in. I believe it was more than 500 questions, which of course it's wonderful to get all these questions. It's also a lot of work, but we have a great team that's working on that. And so of the questions, of the farmers broken down by demographic groups who are calling in questions, we do see some gender difference for the 35 to 44 age group, and that's something that we're going to look into. All right, so how do we do this? I mentioned that we use a reach, benefit, empower, transform framework, and also an integrated participatory research approach. So let me begin and focus mainly on the reach, benefit, empower, and transform framework. So this framework was developed by IFPRI researchers and other CGIAR researchers. And it's a very useful framework for projects to think about where they are in the spectrum from reaching a diverse group of farmers to transforming the social norms that lead to marginalization in farming. And so in our project, we've done a bit of both, or we're trying to do a bit of both. So reach, we could think about in our context, how can we create a level playing field for platform access among the diverse user groups? Benefit would be, how can we ensure the platform's content is relevant and beneficial to diverse users? For empower, how can we leverage the platform to support empowerment of marginalized farmers? All farmers, actually, not just marginalized. And then finally, transform. How can we go beyond the reach, benefit, empower and influence gender norms and systems to transform agricultural information channels? So here we're talking about systemic change, and that's essential if we want to have inclusive agricultural information channels in the future, not just today. All right, so just quickly, because, oh, wow, I think I'm nearing the end of the time for the presentation. So I think I should probably move ahead, and then I'm going to leave for questions. So I think the essential thing was to point out our approach and what we've done in developing the platform. I wanted to end. I'm going to skip ahead to the last couple of slides. And so, you know, I started the conversation, the presentation talking about the cautious optimism, but I have to say that after a year spent having conversations, mainly through our team, because I've only been able to travel to Zambia twice so far, unfortunately, but I would say that farmers at the study sites are very interested in M advisory and also in Atubandike in particular. So in in-depth interviews, and we also had user testing sessions where we co-developed and then tested the platform with farmers. These are a couple of things that farmers said. They liked that the lessons are easy to understand, that they're in Tonga, their language, and that they feel it's part of it's like a conversation to them. People also felt that being able to ask questions and experiences was very valuable and made them feel more involved in the programs. The other source of optimism for me was in community conversations that we had with over 1,700 farmers. It really revealed this creativity and enthusiasm they have in developing strategies. They made clear that there are major social barriers to digital platform and to agricultural information channels in general. But people were very supportive of inclusive advisory, and they had ideas for how to move forward with that. And this is something that we're going to be supporting them with in the future. So just quickly, one quote is, if we begin by placing our trust in female agricultural advisors, we can encourage other communities to do the same. And finally, we need to support our youth and show them that farming can be both rewarding and vital for our community. Thank you for your interest, and my apologies for going over time. I will turn it over to you now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Monica, for that insightful presentation. Actually, we still have like 32 more minutes. It was an hour webinar, so you didn't go over time. So Yeah.
Sorry,
So
Brian, I'm sorry to be. I for some reason was thinking it was ending at 4, so I was hurrying. I don't know, would it make sense? I think people have a sense of what the study's about, and maybe now we could leave the floor for, I think maybe it was a good thing that I thought I was out of time, so that we can leave room for questions, and I can return to the slides in response to questions if relevant. What do you think of that idea?
yeah, I think
Okay.
that's fine. That's okay. Actually, we
Thank
still
you.
have questions. Just to say to our audience that if you have any question, you can either just write it in the chat, or alternatively in the Q&A, or alternatively just raise your hand and we'll be able to bring you in and ask your question. But in the meantime, we have one question that says, who owns or will own in future Atubandige? So maybe we can start with that for now. Thank you.
Yeah, so that's a good question. I mean, for now, it's the ADI project that is implementing this Atubandike. What we're hoping, so we're collaborating with Ministry of Agriculture folks who are part of the content committee, and we're also working with some government extension officers. And we are planning to have a consultant work with us on a business model for the future, because we don't want to be among the many projects that you know, were relatively successful at improving agricultural information channels while there was project funding, but then disappeared after. So that's something that we're hoping that this is something that could be taken up by the government of Zambia with private sector support as well. In Zambia, the government recently has moved in the direction of having e-extension be of focus. So it's kind of a prime time for us to be developing this platform. Now we need to do that work to demonstrate the value of our approach and establish partnership so that we can have the project move forward beyond the project, ADI project life. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that response. We have another question, and it's related to what has been asked earlier. So they're saying, related to that, who pays for the communication costs? Who pays for the communication cost?
Okay, so do you mean who's paying for example, for Viamo, our engagement with Viamo for the IVR communications? Yeah, so it's all project funding at the moment.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Just to reiterate and just to add to what Monica said. So farmers don't pay anything to access these messages. So when they call in, it's free for them to access the messages. Yes. So it's all project funded. Thank you.
That was probably what was being asked. Yeah, so they get 10 free calls per month right now. And right, so right now it's free to farmers as long as they only need 10 calls.
All right, so maybe you would want to just run through the few things that you might have left out as we wait for more questions.
That sounds like a great plan. Okay, so let me just quickly talk about some of the approaches how do you incentivize the farmers and the youth to use the platform? That's a great question, Peter. So I'm hoping that the next couple slides may provide an answer to that. So let's go to how are we reaching farmers? And so reach in this first step, I think one of the key things what are the most common questions asked in platform? Another great question, Peter, and that's actually one that we're going to get to in about 3 slides. So how do we reach farmers? First thing is we use a digital tool that most farmers have now, and we also include some more sophisticated tools as options. So we're using a basic feature phone, interactive voice response. We know that about 90% of men and 80-something% of women at our study sites have own a phone. But some people want to use some more sophisticated tools. So we also have as an option the GeoFarmer decision support tool. So that's also so that we can reach a spectrum of users. And then a second reach approach is we want to ensure diverse farmers have opportunity to be selected and participate as users. So when we selected farmers, our roster included the 3 primary farmers in each household in our study areas. We did a census, and that allowed us to get not only men and women not just as female heads, but also as wives. But it also allowed us to have youth and grandparents who in our sample. And then we want to ensure people can actually participate. So since not everybody owns a phone, there are about 500 people who don't own a phone. We asked them to identify, and we're working through communities to identify who they would borrow a phone from to get access to. And so most women said they'd borrow the phone from their spouse. Finally, for reach, we provided SIM cards, which only cost about $8 per farmer, but makes a big difference in terms of whether people are going to use the platform call in. Okay, so for benefit, we think that a beneficial platform has a couple of attributes. One of them is it has to be user-friendly. And I don't know what user-friendly is for farmers in Zambia, they know. And so we did co-design with farmers. And then we also, the picture on the right is us in testing sessions with 84 farmers where they went through the Atubandike IVR platform, and they identified, where are some navigation issues, what kind of content, doesn't come out very clearly. And then we went through a couple of iterations to come to our rollout version. A second feature of a beneficial platform is that it needs to be supported by some in-person on the ground support. And so we've engaged 84 village-based digital champions who provide digital support and instill trust. And we're finding that this is really, really critical for promoting trust in the platform because it's something new. I think we think that IVR is very familiar in Zambia because Viamo's been around a long time, but we found that only about 1% of farmers at our study sites had ever listened to IVR. So instilling trust is really critical here, and farmers need the digital support as well. Finally, a third feature of a beneficial platform is one that provides relevant and timely content to meet specific needs and circumstances of users. So our static content can't do that, and that's where the dynamic content comes in. And so this gets to one of the questions that Peter asked. And so we're continuously creating dynamic content with farmers, and the process involves a farmer calls in and records their question on the platform, and then the questions are reviewed by a content committee, these folks down at the bottom right. And then every 2 weeks, a new talk show is released. And so for October, this is what our first talk show in October, this is what the content, this is what farmers want to hear about. They had questions about the weather forecast for the season, seed varieties, land preparation, organic fertilizer versus inorganic, and horticulture. And here's just a couple examples of the kinds of questions that they asked that then are answered and form the content for talk shows. So one question is, we've been advised not to burn shrubs and branches when we cut them down. We've been advised to leave them in the field until they decompose. What should a farmer do if he or she has already burnt the cut shrubs? And then another farmer wanted to know, how can they tell their soils are acidic? So these are just a couple of examples of the more than 500 questions that came in this month. Moving along on the Reach, Benefit, Empower, Transform framework. As far as empowerment, we feel that working through these 84 digital champions that are village-based, it provides an opportunity to for empowerment. There's an opportunity to empower farmers through confidence building in their digital skills, and also they see role models. Half of our digital champions are women, and so now in these communities, they're seeing that half of their agricultural advisors are women, whereas before it was far less than that. So this is a way to empower farmers. We also see that our project can empower digital champions themselves because they're gaining some skills through trainings, and they're also gaining experience as leaders and confidence in their leadership experience in their communities. A lot of the digital champions are youth who were kind of marginalized from farming or not sure of what their role is in farming moving forward. And so this is a key way to get youth involved, and they're the ones who often have the really strong digital skills in these communities. So finally, in terms of empowerment, we found that it's really critical to incentivize, motivate, and support the digital champions in their critical role. So that also speaks to one of the questions Peter asked. Thanks, Peter, for leading into these slides with your questions. So finally, this is the last slide, transform. This is the really challenging one, of course. And so the question we return to is, how can we go beyond what we just talked about, reach, benefit, and empowerment, and actually influence gender norms and systems to transform agriculture information channels to be more inclusive? And we're trying out two approaches in Atubandike. One of them is working through the digital champions. So in addition to what I mentioned as our engagement with digital champions, they do receive digital skills training, but we've also held 2 trainings with them on communication skills as well as gender equity, diversity, and inclusion. So that's one way that we're hoping to transform social norms. And then second, we're working through communities to support them in collective actions towards positively transcending harmful norms. So this comes in the form of community engagement meetings, and we've also identified some people as social change makers in their communities who support some of the strategies that the communities identify for transcending harmful norms. I just want to mention at the bottom right is one of our team members, Milton Malama, who is playing the very important role of check-ins. So we call in to the digital champions and the social change makers on at least a weekly basis to check in on how things are going in their work on the project and offer them support as needed. So I think I'll end there and see if there are questions. And also, Peter, did I address your questions with those slides? I'll look in the chat. Yes, thanks. Great.
Okay, thank you very much. So there's one question, I think, from Douglas, who would like to find out how we get farmers to join the platform. Like, how do we get the farmers to join the platform? If you can just speak to that, thank you.
Sure. Do you want me to speak to that, Brian, or would you like to, we could talk about the MTN registration as a first point and then the digital champions?
Okay.
Or I can. I just was thinking that because you have more of the on the ground, I think you would probably answer that better.
Yeah, so I think one of the things is what you earlier alluded to, providing them with access, that is MTN SIM cards. So we're currently working with 2,800 farmers in Southern Province and 1,200 in Eastern Province. So for the Southern Province ones, that's where we are trying just to see and have like some learning activities and to just identify and see how best these approaches can be implemented and try, gain some insights thereafter. So there was a census, so to speak, in these areas, to just make sure that everyone had an equal opportunity to be part of the platform. Then from that census, about 23,360 farmers were registered. So in there, a few were selected to come up with a number that we're talking about, the 2,800, but the 2,800. So these 2,800 are just the one that we are collaborating with. However, the messages that they are gaining or they're getting or learning is they're advised to share it with their wider communities so that you can have, you know, and multiply effects. So in a nutshell, I think that's what I could say. I don't know if you could want to add anything, Monica, to that.
Thanks, Brian, for that great response. I'll just add on. So then once we identified the 2,800 farmers and assigned or gave them the MTN SIM cards, then Viamo sends a message to them that they have an opportunity to participate in this platform, and then they can call the 667 number. Now, because some farmers probably would just ignore a text from a random number, we also have the digital champions checking in to make sure that farmers see that this is a credible source. There probably are other things that Brian could add, but that might be the essence. The other thing I wanted to mention is, Brian, thank you for mentioning about the multiplier effects, because that's important. We're focusing on 4,000 direct beneficiaries, but we're hoping to reach more than 300,000 through multiplier effects. All right, thank you. Let's see if there are other questions.
Okay, so I think we have a few more questions that have come. So Victor asks, remember Genovet tipping point, certain groups of women and men feel able to make changes or agency, encourage a change in the community. That might be relevant here. I think that's just a comment. Or he's asking to say, is that relevant here? So he says, remember Genovet tipping point, certain groups of women and men feel like they're able to make changes, like agency, and encourage them in the community. Is there anything that is relevant here? Then we have another question from Maureen. She's asking, what proportion of the digital champions are youth, and how many of these are young women? Very brilliant questions. Over to you, Monica.
Yeah, so thanks to both Victor and Maureen for these questions. So one of them about youth. So I don't have the number on the top of my, but it's something like, it's about 60% of the farmers, of the digital champions are youth. And we selected 50% women. So I can get the distribution of, the intersectional information for you, because that's a really important one and something I can include in a future presentation. But I think it's pretty high presentation of young women, I would say. Would you say that, Brian? Just from me looking at pictures of the digital champions, there are quite a few, and we have women who come to the trainings with their babies, and so these are younger women. That's another way that I'm reaching this conclusion that we have a high percent, probably I'd say 55% young women as digital champions. Then the second question about Genovate, that is certainly relevant. And that's something that I need to go to that report and see what sorts of lessons, because that's something that we need to do. There's so much that's been learned, and we don't want to repeat the same mistakes. Of course, the context is different, but I do not remember the details about the tipping point. If you wanted to add, please do so. But I think that's critical, that we should see that there are some for some groups of women and marginalized groups, it will be easier to make the transformative changes. But for others, it will be much harder, and it will be important to identify who those are and work with communities to come up with strategies for better including the full range of women farmers. Thank you. Just
Okay,
seeing.
so I'm told there's a question from Kelvin. Kelvin, Dodo, you can enable Kelvin to come through and ask the question.
Yes, Brian, I have activated his audio. So,
Okay. Kelvin, you can go ahead, please. Thank you.
No, I don't have a question. Maybe I accidentally raised my hand.
No worries.
Okay. We have one more question from Maureen. So Maureen, it says, in line with the sustainability questions raised earlier, are there plans to gradually work with farmers and service providers to eventually pay for the service as they are convinced of the benefits?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. So that's one that I think that that's something to look for to the future. But I guess right now I'm seeing, yeah, agricultural advisory as a public good, and therefore not one that farmers would pay for. But I can see that in the future, it's something that we should consider. I know a lot of countries are moving or have already moved in that direction. But I guess for now, I'm hesitant to think about a near future where farmers are expected to pay for this sort of for use of this kind of a platform, because I think it's going to take a long time for farmers to be convinced of the value. We already are getting in some quick wins, some thumbs up about the project, but it's also when it comes down to priorities and having to make a decision between paying for household needs, direct household needs, and engaging in a platform. I guess we'd have to see how, what kind of a price this would be. Right now, I will say it's pretty expensive per farmer. I can't quote that off the top of my head, but so it's something, these are really, really important questions, and ones that I'm so glad that you are keeping us on track, because we have about a year and a few months remaining on the project, and we need to engage and find a way to ensure the sustainability moving forward. Thanks for that question, Maureen.
Yeah. Thank you. That sustainability question is usually actually a tricky question, but I can see we have a hand from Victor. Victor, you can come through.
Yeah, Monica, just listening to your response and Maureen's question, I was just, hold on. Oh, well, you can hear me, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Good. I mean, there could be, you're going to have this business model person coming in. I don't know how many of these digital tools have, died after projects were closed. So, I mean, you need to make a difference here, I guess. And I mean, you could have cooperative models. I think the transformative part of what you've been describing is the community engagement, not the digital tool. That's not transformative. You have them for all kinds of things, right? It's actually everything around it. So of making it possible, of keeping it up to date, of making more people connect to it, and so on. So, and I'm sure you can do that in sort of more cooperative business models where that's more appropriate in the society or in the sub-society or whatever, or it's more business oriented, and then it's more for, a certain for profit angle, which might be linked to things like having cheaper access to fertilizer or something, so it's advertising or marketing kind of income. And as you mentioned with extension, just imagine how many governments in sub-Saharan Africa have really invested significantly in extension over long periods of time. Not many. I mean, I always think of Ethiopia as being a country where that's been done for over several decades, ups and downs. So imagine if that's not an option. I mean, of course, digital tools that you're working here with, that would lower the cost of extension, probably. However, if you don't invest in it in the first place, it's actually additional cost for the government, because beforehand they didn't invest in any significant way in extension. So in any case,
Yeah.
I think my message was just there's different business models and different, from collaborative community, collaborative cooperative, to more to more pay as you go kind of for profit business models that maybe we should be able to offer or to put to the table, and then depending on the country or the region or the district or the business partner, you can sort of walk through there and say, I think we should go for that business model. That makes more sense for us here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, this is great. I mean, right. So there's kind of, there's a continuum of different kinds of business models.
That's
and
it,
we should
yeah.
look into these different possibilities and think about the costs and benefits from multiple perspectives, including from a socially inclusive perspective. So
Yeah.
I think these are great ideas. Thank you for sharing. I think you're right. I mean, the thing that's more transformative here is the community engagement. It's not necessarily the digital platform, it's the community part. Because I do have to say that some of the conversations we're having with farmers, that's one of the things that comes up, that initially people are feeling a little bit uncomfortable about some of the conversations, including questions about what kind of role do they see for themselves in a project such as this, because they're often not asked these questions. And so this is part of the agency, the transformative part of the project, I feel, is the in-person part is really probably, as you say, the most transformative part here. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much, Victor, for that contribution. I think we have one more question from Malawi. It says, when are you doing the pilot Let's Chat platform here in Malawi?
Yeah, we should chat about that, right? We want to, yeah, we would like to extend beyond Zambia. It's really ended up being quite an undertaking, we discovered. And so for right now, we're focusing on Zambia, but I would love to talk about your ideas for how we could move this to Malawi. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I see we do not have any more questions. And before we maybe close, just give you just a minute to offer your closing remarks, Monica.
Thank you, Brian. I don't know if I'll need a minute, but I just wanted to say thank you, everyone, for your attention and asking really engaging questions and offering ideas for us to, as we navigate through this project. So I really appreciate the conversation that we've had today. And thanks for your attention and your interest in Tubandike. And I also just want to give a big thank you to the amazing research team based in Zambia, including Brian, Milton, Cleo, Cynthia, and Chimunya, and as well as the communications team that has provided us with fantastic communication support on our project. And thank you, Mitello, for hosting today, and Brian for being the moderator. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Thank you. Until next time, we would like to thank everyone that managed to join. Let's also join next month. There'll be another one, an advert will be posted. Let's join like we have joined here. Thank you very much. Until next time, bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you, bye.